けれども、時間終了の3分前に最初のチャイムが鳴ります。で、持ち時間が終了すると2回目のチャイムが鳴ります。申し訳ないんですけれど、大変時間が限られていますので、報告時間を厳守いただければと思います。それではパネリストの方4名を簡単に紹介させていただきます。発言順に、まず仏壇大学国際問題研究所副委員長のシェン・リンリー先生です。シェン先生は賢人会議のメンバーでもありますし、レクナとも大変関係が深い先生で、北東アジアの平和と安定化パネルのメンバーも務めていただいております。続きまして、韓国の NGO 参与連帯政策委員会委員長のイ・テホさんです。イ・テホさんもしばしば長崎に来られていたことがありますし、平和問題に関しては韓国の立場から非常に造詣の深い方であります。続きまして、ロシアエネルギー安全保障研究センター長のアントン・プロプコフ氏です。やはり賢人会議のメンバーでもありますし、大変お忙しい方、わざわざ地球市民集会のために時間を取ってくださいました。北朝鮮にも頻繁に行かれて、北朝鮮の原子力問題については世界で最も造詣の深い方のお一人だというふうに思います。で、続きまして、モンゴルからジャガルサイハン・エンクサイハン大使です。モンゴルの元国連大使でありまして、モンゴルの一角非核地帯政策を推進したリーダーとして大変有名な方です。レクナでも北東アジアの平和と安定化パネルの平和と安全保障パネルのメンバーとして設立時からずっと活躍いただいております。それでは早速パネリストからの報告に移りたいと思います。まずシェン・リンリー先生、よろしくお願いいたします。
Well, I'm honored to be invited to this important gathering. Addressing a very timely and important issue. Denuclearizing the DPRK, which remains a daunting challenge. How to make a country that may have virtually acquired nuclear weapons wherewith to get rid of it. I think the US is unwilling to abandon its nuclear. Russia mostly likely not abandon. And China may have great difficulty in abandoning before others will abandon. So why North Korea will abandon? Personally, I have great suspicion if Kim Jong-un is genuinely in saying that he intends to abandon. I think he would lie. But even if he would lie, let's take it as real. He means what he said. If North Korea would not perceive external hostility from the US, they are willing to abandon. US may think America has never threatened North Korea. It's North Korea's launching of the war. 60 years ago, that has threatened American flag. America never would intend or mean to threat DPRK. America did everything possible to defend liberty, freedom, and the free world. But many disagree. Iraqi people may not think America has saved them. U.S. has no solid evidence that Iraqi government was developing WMD around the time of 9/11. So who gives the U.S. the authorization to preempt a country which may or may not be legitimate, but no one gives the U.S. the power to do. The U.S. has talked to the government. After the U.S. switched diplomacy from Taiwan to Beijing, why the U.S. it's a Taiwan Relation Act, a domestic public law to supersede international law, which is UN Charter, which in China's view is the China-US communique, which re-normalize China-US relationship. US domestic law should not supersede its international obligation. There are ample evidence US has violated international law, to which US has been a party, and the US may have contributed to making such international law. So DPRK may think the US used to deploy nuclear weapons on the soil of South Korea. And the US has deployed many heavy military gears in the region. So it's not abnormal that DPRK would perceive this as a threat. DPRK may not think it is a threat, as Japan may not think American military equipment deployed in the region is a threat to Japan. But that takes the positive mutual interaction. How DPRK would act to make America to feel that British, French nuclear weapons are not a threat to America. Israel nuclear weapon, not a threat. And probably Indian nuclear weapon, not a threat. Or even during Cold War time. The secretive, covert Pakistani nuclear weapon program may not pose a paramount threat to America. At that time, the expansion of Soviet communism was a major threat. So the Reagan government would take a blind eye with Islamabad. So North Korea would think it's America's behavior that would drive them crazy. It's the collapse of the Soviet Union, disappearance of its major friend, that would make them feel fearful. It's China's opening. This is the 40 years of China's opening. That China needs money from Japan, from Taiwan, from US, and from South Korea. That would make China to have a different approach to DPRK. They used to threaten China that they would retaliate China by establishing diplomatic relationship with Taiwan. Deng Xiaoping told them the day you establish relationship with Taiwan, that was the day, will be the day we sever our official tie with DPRK, with Pyongyang. So they did not do. But they hate. By saying this, I do not mean I think their nuclear weapon development is reasonable. It makes sense. It's legitimate. No. But I'm saying we stand with our position. They sit with their chair. They have different perspective. And with this very hard-line realism, it's very difficult for them to adapt. And personally, I don't think that they will. But that gives me no reason not to take their word for its face value. Okay, let's do something to make you feel secure. That's President Donald Trump has taken a very embodied action, disregarding the good advice of many of his colleagues to go to Singapore. Just like Nixon, to do something many would think not appropriate. He did. To give North Korea a face. to give them a reason not to feel US that threatening. I think that's very good. But if this would make him to get a Nobel Peace Prize, that's too cheap. He had to give a lot more. So that has turned the tension. Last year we saw President Trump was calling DPRK the rocket man. And he has fury and fire. And now he said, I like him. We fell in love. In my view, this is good. Courageous. But that needs to be followed by action. Not only rhetorics. The DPRK say, let me do something for you. They say they have invited international journalists to see they have destroyed their nuclear weapon testing site. And they say they have ended their missile engine testing site. Well, that's not good enough. When you keep a distance for those unprofessional people to watch, you can lie. And you may only destroy the open it, and you may have lots of entrance to the same testing site. So it's not good enough. A trustworthy relationship has to be verified. That's why President Trump has wisely demanded a verifiable dismantlement. He's not wrong. No verification, no trust. And the self-announcement of destroying rocket engine rocket testing site has been totally unproven. And they may still have lots of, if not hundreds of them, but at least tens of them, uranium enrichment facilities. Why they want to make a great decision to meet with President Trump? Part of the reason may be they are approaching to the perfection of their testing program. They do not need a lot more tests. So they can stay here to see if you don't give us anything, we would continue. But we can trade for some benefits if we would slow or stop the testing, but we would not disadvantage our knowledge. So we need DPRK to do more. And they say after doing this, US needs to do more. And President Trump, without properly consulting his South Korean colleague, announced no more joint military drill. That's crazy. You have to consult with a friend. You cannot make a decision. Tell your enemy without consulting with a friend first. And now he is resuming one of these planned drill. That will annoy DPRK. South Korea, under the leadership of Moon Jae-in, has taken very active, very proactive, very positive, but probably too positive approach. That they want to have some peace agreement. With a commitment, DPRK would abandon nuclear weapon, but without fulfilling this commitment, they want to have. That would make DPRK to get a lot more without fulfilling what the US would be expecting. US has been saying, since I have been willing to engage you, and I would do a lot more to you, you have to abandon everything, otherwise even more sanction. Now we see the apparent rift between Seoul and Washington. Seoul does not DPRK to do everything. They want a paper. So US want both paper and real disarmament, but the real disarmament would go first. And China is caught in the middle. Partly due to China's collaboration with many countries in Security Council. And we take the major responsibility because at this time, DPRK's foreign trade China, it may have done more than 90% of foreign trade with China. So China picks up the burden by punishing them if they continue to do this. And partly due to such pressure, they yield to be more soft. And that gives them a chance to meet with my leader, President Xi, 3 times a year. We are worried if DPRK would continue to test. That would harm China's environment, natural environment, underground water and atmosphere. And that may make the US to really launch a preemption, with which China will be caught in a dilemma. If we assist the DPRK, then our collaboration with the US would be destroyed. But if we don't assist, we may betray our treaty agreement. So we really don't want them to be mad. But if they would get the new acquaintance without the principle, US would accept the DPRK without denuclearizing. That would be very bad for China. If DPRK would keep having nuclear weapons, but just fool President Trump, and Trump would still say, it's okay. We think we will be fooled. So we need to talk to both US and the DPRK. We need to have a principle. But meantime, US should not demand the DPRK to abandon everything without lifting certain limited sanctions. And DPRK should not fool the US. If the US would lift some sanction to a certain extent, DPRK would still push the nuclear envelope. So China tried to work with other countries, including South Korea, Russia, to promote the partial lifting of the sanction. But without lifting it, we are not going to unilaterally leave the sanction aside. We would violate the sanction. We would keep the sanction. So the situation seems to be pretty complicated. But even though I would say the tension now has been much lower. If it's not historically lower, it is very low. And DPRK and ROK would keep only one military post in their long standing zone, a demilitarized zone. I have been there for many times, and they eye to eye such a kind of hostility. Now they seem to enjoy certain brotherhood. That's good. External power, US, Russia, China, Japan, etc., need to play our positive role in providing our peaceful bridging to persuade each to do more and to persuade each to expect others to do everything at one time. Thank you very much.
ありがとうございました。続いて、イ・テホ氏、お願いいたします。
皆さん、こんにちは。It is very honored for me to be invited to this Citizens Assembly and to share and discuss about recent dramatic change in the Korean Peninsula and in this region. My English is very limited, so I will read the prepared papers. With the Inter-Korean Summit at the Panmunjom in April and the North Korean-US Summit in Singapore, a great shift has begun in the ceasefire and military confrontation state of Korean Peninsula. This shift is toward the complete denuclearization and the permanent peace regime in the Korean Peninsula and the new relationship among the countries concerned. It was not easy to predict such a dramatic development even at the end of 2011. President Moon Jae-in created room for negotiation by reiterating time and again that there would be no war on the Korean Peninsula saying no one can make a decision on military action on Korean Peninsula without previous consent from South Korea. Kim Jong-un, the chairman of the State Affairs Commission of North Korea, suggested in his 2018 New Year's address that North and South Korea make this year a history-making year that could be recognized as noteworthy in Korean history, where two Koreans are not tied down to the past and can improve their icy relationship. On the top of that, the US President Donald Trump, who intended to use maximum pressure as well as maximum engagement, responded with his own solution, opening up new possibility for a comprehensive negotiation between two countries. President Trump thought the past government's policies, such as strategic patience or regime change, had failed. The Trump administration's National Security Strategy 2017 and the Nuclear Posture Review 2018 defined North Korea as a threat to the US, but do not specify the possibility of a preemptive nuclear attack on North Korea, unlike the previous government. And the shift in political climate on the Korean Peninsula has resulted from the Candlelight Revolution took place in South Korea in late 2016. The Candlelight Revolution has shown that the citizens themselves have the capacity to address social challenges in a peaceful and democratic way. The security state, which has exaggerated the fears from the outside and forced people to endure power abuse and injustice in the name of national security, has lost its legitimacy in the process of the Candlelight Revolution. That is why transforming ceasefire state, in which the state of emergency has become as a rule for the past 70 years, to a permanent peace regime, has inevitably become the most important issue of the Moon administration's public diplomacy. I'd like to talk about the differences was made recently at the summits. After the South-North Korean Summit, inter-Korean dialogue and cooperation has been routinized. The inter-Korean dialogue that has become more common serves as a minimum safety means to prevent the escalation of the crisis caused by accidental situation, as well as a communication channel to frequently consult with each other about innumerable tasks. At the first North Korea-US summit, President Trump pledged to provide security assurance to North Korea, and Chairman Kim Jong-un reaffirmed his unwavering commitment to complete the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. One of the most important characteristics of recent negotiations is attempts for a comprehensive solution. The Panmunjom Declaration is aimed at a comprehensive solution to a problem on Korean Peninsula. The declaration said a nuclear-free Korean Peninsula through complete denuclearization as one of the goals that must be achieved in the process of establishing a permanent and stable peace regime on Korean Peninsula. The declaration speaks of the necessity of step-by-step disarmament in line with the military confidence-building process, as well as complete denuclearization. As in the declaration made by the South and North Korean leaders, the agreement between North Korea and the US clearly stipulates that a comprehensive approach to the establishment of a new North Korea-US relationship and the building of a permanent peace regime enables complete denuclearization. The attitude change in the US is particularly noteworthy. While abandoning its approach of to give meat if North Korea gives a nuclear weapon, the US clarified that the negotiations with North Korea are essentially related to the improvement of relationship and disarmament negotiation for peace related to the security assurance of North Korea regime. It is also distinguished from the past negotiation that the South and the North are preemptively implementing measures necessary for building trust. South Korea suggested to the US to decide to put off joint military exercise, which had been perceived as hurdles to initiating dialogue during the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games. US strategic assets such as a nuclear carrier and a long-range strategic bomber were not deployed in accordance with what North Korea had requested, thereby indirectly expressing South Korea's and the US will for negotiation. It is noteworthy that President Trump himself called South Korea-US joint drill expensive, provocative war game, setting a bad light during a good faith negotiation. On the other side, North Korea decided at the third plenary meeting of the Seventh Workers' Party Central Committee to halt conducting nuclear tests and test firing intercontinental ballistic missile and dismantle the Punggye nuclear test site shortly before the summit meeting. In the wake of September 19 Inter-Korea Summit, Pyongyang said that it will perpetually dismantle the nuclear facility in Yongbyon if the US takes appropriate measures. These preemptive measures have contributed to making the uncertain future of negotiation more optimistic. The direction for resolving the issues agreed by the three countries is not much different from the direction that civil society has consistently advocated. However, there are a lot of negotiations and obstacles to be left to actually solve problems. The typical example is the second summit between the US and North Korea, which was scheduled later this year, but postponed to next year. The tug of war between the two countries continued over the process of North Korea's nuclear dismantlement and verification, lifting of sanctions of North Korea, and the declaration of a permanent ceasefire. And in order for the ongoing negotiation to lead to comprehensive, peaceful resolution, some of the following perception and approaches to practice are necessary. First of all, South Korea and the US and the countries concerned should be alert to unilateral and subjective attitude. While there are active debates over whether North Korea's will to denuclearization is genuine, there is a lack of discussion on what South Korea and the US should give up in order to help North Korea give up its nuclear program. It is necessary to have an attitude of putting yourself in the person's shoes. The most important starting point is to recognize that the overwhelming military power of South Korea and the US has threatened the opponents. South Korea has spent military expenditure higher than North Korea's total GDP every year for the past 30 years. This figure excludes the military expenditure of US armed forces in Korea. It is not convincing to further expand South Korean conventional arms and at the same time to demand North Korea give up nuclear weapons and missiles. Therefore, South Korea and the US with military superiority should come up with a more proactive and initiating military reduction plan and put it into practice. Second, discussion should be made in earnest on the final possible form of denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula, which all North and South Korea and the US can identify. Complete denuclearization means the state that the nuclear threat to the Korean Peninsula is removed. This cannot be accomplished just by the CVID of North Korea's nuclear weapon, and can be achieved by the disappearance of all military strategies depending on nuclear deterrent on and around the Korean Peninsula. The nuclear umbrella strategy on which South Korea, Japan, and the US ban should be included agendas along with the dismantlement of North Korea's nuclear weapons. The nuclear-free Korean Peninsula mentioned in Panmunjom Declaration can only be realized through creating the nuclear weapon-free zone. In addition, the security assurance to North Korea mentioned in Singapore summit is impossible without removal of the nuclear umbrella. On the other hand, it is worth examining to urge the South and North to preemptively join the Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and Japan and neighboring nuclear power to join the treaty by spirit. Third, the dialogue for solving problem of Korean Peninsula should be closely linked to efforts to military tension, alleviate the military tensions in Northeast Asia and to establish a common security cooperation system. The territorial disputes in this region, however, are complex heritage from unfortunate history of imperialism, colonialism, and world war. Appealing to military means cannot address the territorial dispute and can even bring about serious disaster. Therefore, efforts to turn the armistice status of Korean Peninsula into a peace regime should be made along with efforts to change the increasingly militarized Asian's water into a sea of peace and coexistence. In particular, efforts are essential to turn the strengthening militarism and the old military alliance structure in this region into an independent common security cooperation framework. In this regard, it is very worrisome that Japan Peace Constitution, which is the base premise of peace cooperation in East Asia is in danger of being damaged by the name of collective self-defense. The construction of a peace regime on Korean Peninsula and the maintenance of Japan's peace constitution are key to the peaceful cooperation and the prevention of armed conflict in this region. First, it is necessary to exercise new imagination in order to escape stereotypes and taboos of confrontational Cold War era. Until now, antagonism and disbelief, military confrontation and oppression, which have been presented under the name of realism, have caused aggravation instead of solving problems. On the other hand, the more optimistic and peace-oriented approaches are proven effective. These approaches include comprehensive approaches, efforts to build trust, and preemptive peaceful action. In the past, these approaches were misunderstood and criticized as overly naive and unrealistic, but now they have been proven as a very realistic and inevitable prescription to solve a problem. Finally, it is necessary to clarify that not only government and security experts, but also citizens are the key player in solving problems, should act more boldly to resolve conflict peacefully. Now, civic groups and researchers should speak more vigorously about the possibility and reality of peace based on peaceful means, armed reduction, and common security, not based on nuclear weapon and military alliance. Now, peace experts, not security experts, should be able to work across borders. Now, peace should be given opportunity. Thank you.
ありがとうございました。続いて、Dr. Flopov, please.
First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me. It's always a great pleasure and honor to be in Nagasaki, and I think every expert who is dealing with nuclear issues, either as practitioner in the nuclear field or as a diplomat or as an expert, must visit Hiroshima and Nagasaki at least once, because it's very educating and it's a clear sign how destructive of the nuclear power could be if it is out of control. First, in my presentation, I would like to echo what has already been said by a number of participants at this panel. Significant progress in reducing tensions on the Korean Peninsula has been achieved over the 10 months to November 2018. I think we should not underestimate how important the recent developments are. Let us recall that only last December, the risk of military conflict was not only very high, but looked out of control. Massive joint US Aerocade military exercises were taking place in the region, and the DPRK military forces were put on a heightened state of alert. Some of the foreign embassies in Pyongyang were working to improve emergency preparedness and seriously thinking about upgrading their bomb shelters, while some US politicians were urging Pentagon to evacuate military families from South Korea and Japan. There was also a risk to the 23rd Winter Olympic Games in Pyeongchang. I remember that period very well, as I was planning a trip with my family to the Olympics, and in late December, by which time we had already made all bookings, The idea of taking kids of school and preschool age to a region that might be on the brink of a military crisis suddenly started to look questionable at best. After Chairman Kim Jong-un's 2018 New Year address and follow-on President Moon Jae-in diplomacy, the tensions subsided and the games proved a great success. And we enjoyed a lot with the games. Important steps were also made in 2018 this year in the direction of the nuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. The DPRK has announced a moratorium on missile and nuclear tests, and a number of speakers already mentioned it in their presentation. Steps have been taken to render the nuclear test site in Punggye inoperative, following the inter-Korean summits in Panmunjom and Pyongyang declarations, as well as joint statement by President Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un. Following the summit in Singapore, the parties reiterated the goal of denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. As a result of Pyongyang summit, which took place in September, the DPRK agreed permanently dismantle Dongchang-ri missile engine test site and launch platform under the observation of international experts. Where we are today? At this point, there are two main dialogue tracks which are tightly connected. The first track is aimed at improving relations between the Republic of Korea and the DPRK. The second is aimed at achieving a deterrent between the United States and North Korea, as well as making progress towards the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. It appears that the first track dialogue is making better progress. There have been already 3 meetings between President Moon Jae-in and Chairman Kim Jong-un. The second track, meanwhile, is stagnating despite the historic summit in Singapore. It is worth noting that the issue of denuclearization, which was previously channeled mainly through USA DPRK dialogue track at Pyongyang's own assistance, is now playing an increasingly prominent role on the agenda of inter-Korean meetings. A case in point is the Pyongyang summit on September 18-20. In the declaration of that summit, Pyongyang expressed its willingness to dismantle permanently, on certain conditions, the nuclear facilities at Yongbyon Nuclear Research Center. And I do have some other indications that it could be done. In the same document, the two sides also agreed to cooperate closely in the process of pursuing complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And I think this is a significant change if at the beginning officials in Pyongyang believed that nuclear issues should be the subject only for US-North Korean dialogue. Since recently, as I already mentioned, it's becoming a growing topic for South-North dialogue. In essence, the DPRK-ROK track has become the main engine of the progress in the dialogue on the Korean Peninsula. This owes much to President Moon Jae-in's policy on the DPRK. What is next? A rapid denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula clearly is not a realistic possibility. Of course, I think most of us in this audience would like to see very quick denuclearization of the peninsula, but it is, I'm afraid, it is not possible. In the short and medium term, the DPRK most likely will not abandon the nuclear capability, which it has spent more than 5 decades building, and which the regime regards as a guarantee of its own survival. Nevertheless, events in the recent months have demonstrated, and I mentioned some of them, that progress towards a denuclearization is possible, albeit at a slower pace than some, including myself, might have hoped. All the main parties involved will need to show patience. The central principle of negotiations the parties must adapt is the principle of phased and reciprocal approach. That principle was used to great effect in the Iran nuclear talks. And reciprocity already been mentioned on a few occasions in the audience earlier today. I believe the principle of small steps, of baby steps, should dominate during the early phase of dialogue as an element of confidence building. The joint statement made at the Singapore summit contains a very important idea. Mutual confidence building can promote the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And I think this is the area where think tankers, scholars should and must, or could and must contribute. Because I think we badly need ideas what kind of next steps can be done. Probably all of us would like to see a full list of North Korean nuclear facilities to be disclosed, but my personal view, due to experience of some other countries, it is not very realistic. So we should be creative to think what kind of new steps, small steps, but in the direction of denuclearization of the peninsula, and steps reciprocal would be made. What are the possibilities regarding confidence building measures? Speaking of the military side of things, the parties could establish, could set up a trilateral mechanism, the PRK, LK, and the United States, that would regulate military drills, both in the north and in the south, and ensure their transparency. These measures could be applied both to the national drills by the LK and the PRK forces, and to bilateral or multilateral exercises held in their territory off their shores. Such a mechanism might include abolishing any drill within a certain swath of territory on both sides of the demilitarized zone and coastline, inviting each other observers to the drills, mutual briefings about the details of the exercises. I'm sure that some other smart, creative ideas would be introduced with this regard. The fact that the United States and South Korea have not conducted any major joint exercises, drills on the Korean Peninsula in recent months is an important achievement. As for the nuclear side of things, one of the first steps might include setting up a dialogue mechanism to produce an agreed definition of what exactly denuclearization of Korean Peninsula means. The term has often been used in joint documents, including the ones adopted early this year, but the parties very likely do not interpret the term in the same way. We are talking about a more comprehensive solution than simply achieving the TPRK nuclear disarmament. The same applies to verification measures, which should be applied on both sides of the peninsula as part of the denuclearization process. I have already mentioned the need to use a phased and reciprocal approach in pursuing the next steps. We need to think about what the reciprocal measures might be should the DPRK prove willing to move forward. My personal impression is that there is a growing pressure in Pyongyang over the lack of reciprocal compensatory steps by the other parties. Negotiations are a two-way street, and the reciprocal measures that would offer some benefits to North Korea should be stepped up. Otherwise, the whole process risks bringing to a halt or even relapsing into another escalation anytime now. In this context, we should consider the possibility of using exemptions from UN Security Council sanctions resolution in order to implement some specific projects involving the DPRK. Such projects might include the Northern-Southern railway system connection as the first step. This is one of the projects that was discussed during the Pyongyang summit in September. Restart joint ROK-DPRK operations at the Kherson industrial complex and easing restrictions on the use of North Korean labor force abroad would be the next move. Speaking of the format of the dialogue on formulating the next steps at the official level to reduce tensions and achieve progress over denuclearization, we can use the experience of the Iranian nuclear talks, which proved to be successful. Multinational approach that includes the countries of the region and combines bilateral and multilateral threats, as it wasn't the case of Iran negotiation, looks the most promising and sustainable now. And I think there are some historic issues between Japan and Korea, for example, and I don't think that such sensitive issues should be discussed in multinational forum. I think the bilateral forum is the best one to address them. I know how sensitive they are in Tokyo, but I also know how sensitive they are in Pyongyang. Despite the Trump administration decision to withdraw from the JCPOA, I do believe the so-called Iran deal is an exceptional example of the art of diplomacy. And I think we should build on that when we discuss the Korean Peninsula. As part of the talks in such a format on the Korean Peninsula, we could also borrow from Iran negotiations such principles as mutual respect, reciprocity, and recognition of state sovereignty and security interests of all parties involved. What is also important, the DPRK partners at the talk should not put forward impossible conditions. They should not demand things that no sovereign state would ever accept bearing in military defeat. At a certain stage, we should also be ready to reiterate North Korea's right to peaceful use of nuclear energy under its safeguards, and Tatsu Suzuki already mentioned it in his presentation, as well as its right to peaceful space exploration under reasonable transparency measures. The long-term goal of this dialogue should be development of peace and security mechanisms in Northeast Asia. And this is for sure the area, the sphere where our countries of experts presented on this panel should be actively involved. And I think we should try to persuade our governments to be creative, because this is exactly the case, denuclearization of Korean Peninsula, when it's much easier to fail than succeed. This is why all of us have to be creative in introducing new ideas and new suggestions. In the conclusion, I would like to remind that Panmunjom Declaration also emphasized the role of the international community support and community to support and cooperate in the liberalization of the Korean Peninsula. And this is a framework, an umbrella, which I think give other countries a chance to contribute cooperatively. Thank you.
ありがとうございました。続きまして、ドイツ再編大使お願いいたします。
Thank you very much.
First of all, I would like to say that I represent Mongolian NGO Blue Banner, which is devoted to promoting nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. This is my second time that I'm participating in the People's Assembly. Last time it was in 2006, and I'm honored to participate in this important assembly. The question may arise, what can be the role of a small non-nuclear weapon state in all this? The point is that I would like to point out that there is a potential for all states, because all are connected together, to put their own contributions. If small states can do that, I believe that the larger countries, allies to a nuclear weapon state, can also play a very important role in this very important issue. As a small country, Mongolia follows the saying that a duck is tranquil, is calm, when the lake is calm. So we, as a duck, we have an interest in having a stable atmosphere, a peace and security in our region. We cannot reach out to others, but at least we're trying to focus on our region. And there is a plus, because we are on good terms with the two Koreas. We have traditional relations with the DPRK and are developing a strategic partnership with the Republic of Korea in all areas. So this is a plus, and what we're trying to do is to make use of this. Mongolia pursues a very pragmatic policy, unlike in the previous times, and promotes good neighborly relations with all the countries, without exception. First, we're trying to have balanced relations between Russia and China, not to serve one great power against the interest of the other. Our policy is non-alignment until our interests are violated. We told that to the Russians, with the Chinese. If we have very good relations, don't expect anything negative from Mongolia. In broader sense, it tries to play a role of an impartial, non-threatening neutral state in good standing with other countries, especially our two neighbors. As I said, we believe that all countries, even small ones, can contribute to the common cause. The example of, for example, of Malta, which initiated the Law of the Sea Conference, or even of Oman, that allowed the US and Iran to come together to discuss issues directly, are very inspiring examples. In that spirit, Mongolia is committed to be not only a consumer of regional security and stability, but also, to the extent possible, as a contributor. And that's what we're trying to do. As you might know, Mongolia is a state with a nuclear weapon-free status. And that is recognized by the United Nations, meaning that we don't have nuclear weapons of other countries on our territory, and we will never have. And the 5 nuclear weapon states with which we have negotiated for a long time, they have agreed to a joint declaration that they will not pressure Mongolia in accepting nuclear weapon-related technology on their territory. Therefore, the territory of 1.5 billion square kilometers, that's the area that we have, will not be an area of great power rivalry, but of stability and predictability. In that sense, there is an agreement that none of the 5 nuclear weapon states will use Mongolia to gain, let's say, strategic superiority in one area or another. Thus, we will not allow to have, let's say, missile
defense system or anti-missile defense system on our territory. So this is small Mongolia's contribution to stability. Therefore, it is not surprising that what we're trying to do is to contribute to stability and mutual understanding. With that in mind, in 2013, Mongolia came up with an idea to promote stability and in the region. What we're trying to do is to bring together the other parties of the six-party talks to discuss the issues of stability and to promote stability in this area. We are working to have annual meetings on non-strategic issues of the region. This is very important, and we invite representatives of all the six-party talks in their personal capacities. We invite NGOs and think tanks also, just to discuss issues, exchange views, and so on and so forth. And this has been done since 2015. So this annual meeting, and we try to focus on such issues as economic integration, energy issues, infrastructure development, and so on, without specifically focusing on nuclear issues. For example, we are trying to be helpful on bilateral issues. I was given to understand that there were a number of bilateral meetings between the representatives of Japan and DPRK held in Mongolia. The last one was held, I think, a month ago. Participated in it was Mr. Shigeru Kitamura, who, as I understand, is head of the Japanese Cabinet of Intelligence Research Office. On the DPRK side was number 2 to number 2 to the DPRK, meaning number 2 in the party hierarchy. He is the Mr. Kim Yong-chol's deputy, the one who is discussing and went to Washington and discussed the issues with Pompeo and even met with Mr. Trump. So that person came and discussed the issue of bilateral relations with the Japanese representative. This is very important practically. No, you don't read in the headlines, but at least what we're trying to do is to be as helpful as possible in that area. Now I would like to say briefly about possible contribution of a small country like Mongolia. First, we can serve as a neutral venue for, as I said, bilateral, trilateral meetings, official, unofficial, semi-official meetings. Mongolia has on its territory seismic infrastructure, radionuclide stations, and even noble gas detection system, meaning that it can say its word when, if a nuclear weapon test is carried out, even secretly. By doing that, we can contribute to a greater confidence regarding nuclear weapon tests. And we can participate in future monitoring exercises. If the sides agree that there will be no nuclear weapon tests, Mongolia can be part of that working group. During future talks on the verification mechanism, which of course will be inevitable, Mongolia can contribute to these discussions and later to form part of an agreed mechanism, verification mechanism regarding denuclearization. If the talks are serious, I'm sure that the question of verification will come up, and we can be part of that because its experts have worked with IAEA and CTBTO, and our experts participated in verification missions in DPRK and Iran. So we have some experience that we can share with other countries. Of course, we can also be prepared to share our experience of discussing and negotiating with the 5 nuclear weapon states, where they, at the end of which they have promised not to use Mongolian territory against each other's interests. So we're a neutral country in that sense. And that is, I think, a positive example. It was not easy. We had more than 80 talks with the nuclear weapon states to come to such an agreement. And it was low-key, and it was quite useful. Now we're also participating in Northeast Asian nuclear weapon-free zone discussions. Mongolia has said that we have our own status, but we are prepared to work on an informal basis to see where and how, under which conditions can nuclear weapon-free zone be discussed. Not established, but discussed. And about which I think Dr. Suzuki and Dr. Hayes have already talked, so I will not comment this. Now, the role of civil society is also important. We're trying to be as helpful as possible in that sense as well. In 2015, together with focal points of GPAC Northeast Asia, we have established, launched a so-called Ulaanbaatar process of NGOs, so as to create space for civil society organizations of the region to exchange information and views on issues of common interest or concern. And once we have these meetings, we can always communicate our findings to our governments. That was the understanding, and that still is. And one of the distinctive features is that the two Koreas participate in it. There is a gentleman's agreement. They participate whenever we hold this UB process meeting. At the last meeting with, for example, the Blue Banner has said that it is time to recognize DPRK as de facto nuclear weapon states and deal with it as such, so that when we have the Northeast Asian RECNA meeting, then we should invite also representatives, experts from the DPRK. So this is the idea that we came up with. Last but not least, the NGOs of Mongolia also trying to be as helpful to come up with joint ideas, joint publications. Last year we have published a joint book contributions from all the NGOs, including the two Koreas of the US, Russia, and China. And this we have made it available to all the interested organizations and people in that sense. And this year we're planning to hold the meeting in Pyongyang, because Pyongyang is interested in hosting that meeting, Mongolian NGO meeting in Pyongyang. However, they said that they don't have so far the regulations how to invite and how to issue visas to South Korean NGOs. So we had to postpone that meeting until next year or the year after. So this is how a small country or NGOs or small countries are trying to be as helpful. So if we can be active, I'm sure that representatives of larger countries or even allies to nuclear weapon states can also be active. Thank you very much.
はい、ちょっとトータル7名という異例に多いパネリストからのプレゼンテーションでしたけれども、これだけのメンバーが揃うということは普通の会議ではまずないということで、少しそのプレゼンテーションの方に多く時間を使ってしまいました。それでですね、あとは30分ちょっとぐらいは時間がありますので、ここから先は質疑応答、ダイアローグに移りたいと思います。これはやはり市民集会ですから、一般の参加者からの質問とかご意見をぜひ歓迎したいと思いますので、 ご意見、ご質問等がありましたら、一応の規則上参加している、正式参加している方が優先権があるというルールですので、これが見えるように手を挙げていただければと思います。一人でも多くの方にご発言いただきたいので、そうですね、お一人の発言は3分以内に限っていただきたいと思います。無理にとは言いませんけれど、もしよろしければ、お名前とご所属、もしくはポジションぐらい、ちょっと最初に言っていただければ助かりますが、これは無理にとは言いません。質問の場合はどなたにかっていうのを最初に明らかにしていただけると助かります。よろしいでしょうか。では、はい。
ありがとうございました。実行委員会のメンバーだから一般市民というのは何のかどうか分かりませんけれども、北朝鮮の核をめぐって3つのなんていうかな、要求っていうか、アメリカに対する要求っていうのは考えられないかと思うんですね。で、3つっていうのは、1つ目は今モンゴルの方からもお話ししましたけれども、北朝鮮を核兵器保有国と認めろと。で、その代わりっていうのはよくわかんないですけども、アメリカも核兵器国と認めてやるぞっていうふうに北朝鮮が言うケースっていうのが一つ。もう一つは、俺たちは核兵器を廃棄するから、アメリカも核兵器を廃棄しろっていう要求のレベルがもう一つのレベル。で、今問題になっているのは、俺たちは核兵器をなくしてもいいから、その代わり自分たちの安全は守ってくれというレベル。さて、この3つでどれが一番アメリカは飲みやすいかということを考えたら明らかだと思うんですね。で、そういう意味では北朝鮮の要求っていうのは、僕はえらいつつましやかだというふうに思ってるんです。自分たちは核兵器をなくすから、あなたたちも核兵器をなくせという要求を掲げているわけでは今のところない。ただ、朝鮮半島の非核化ということだから、アメリカの核が全く安泰だということではなくて、日本も含めてその核の傘っていうものについては外すということにアメリカが同意しろということは含んでいると思うんですけれども、いずれにしても核はこっちはやめるから、あなたたちは自分た北朝鮮の平和を核を保障してくれという要求だというふうに受け止めたら、乗らない話は僕はないと思うんですけれども、いかがでしょうかっていうのがどなたにでもいいんですけれども、質問、県人会議の方がいいかなと思うんですけど、質問したいと思います。以上です。
はい、先にもし他にあれば皆さんにまとめて質問をお受けしようかと思うんですけれど、他には、それとも今の答えを先に聞きたいですね。私も聞きたいんですけれど、はい。どなたからでも結構ですけれども、この要求に関して県人会議のメンバーの方からということで、県人会議のメンバーの方から、はい。
I mean, if you don't mind. First, I think the big issue which you raise, how to proceed. And to my knowledge, since the serious dialogue started early this year, North Korea has never put a condition on the table that the US should dismantle its nuclear arsenal in return, or all other countries should denuclearize. I think, and I mentioned it partially in my presentation, that what could work best in the current environment, when it's much easier to fail rather than succeed, step by step, to identify a few steps, make them, prove that both sides, or all sides of the process are responsible, and try to make new steps. I do think that in the long-term future, denuclearization of peninsula is doable. There are signs and indication of that, though of course a lot of efforts has to be made by all sides, particular to create security mechanisms in the region. Because North Koreans started to work in the nuclear field and missile field more than 15 years ago, I believe, not for fun, but because, or not to sell it for money or for energy resources, but because they feel threatened. It can be misperception, but they feel threatened. And you can see that from early ages, they raise their kids as potential soldiers, as those who should be ready, they must be ready to protect their sovereignty every day. So here we should try to build confidence, we should try to create the system which will make them feel secure. Because I would like to remind, and it will be my final point, what kind of elements, what kind of scenarios the recent joint Aero-K-US military drills included during the last 2 years. First scenario, decapitation of North Korean leadership. Well, if your neighbors have such exercises, it does not make you feel secure. And another element, another scenario, which was exercised during the military drills, how to take control over the capital of DPRK, how to take control over Pyongyang. Special forces was trained to do that. And of course, it makes the regime much more concerned about its survival. So from that point of view, no exercise is important. We should try to identify next steps and to move forward. At the end, we should think about security mechanism and of course role of nuclear powers, because they have to provide security guarantees to all parties involved in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Hayes?
Thank you for the question. As the previous speaker just said, North Koreans have never demanded that the United States dismantle its nuclear weapons, although they've constantly pointed out the hypocrisy of American demands that everyone else give up their nuclear weapons and that the United States retain superiority over all states with nuclear weapons. But I think we have to separate the propaganda machine in Pyongyang from policy. And North Korean policy under Kim Il-sung, then under his son Kim Jong-il, with the initial outreach to the United States in 1991, 92, when he sent Kim Jong-sung, a political compatriot of Kim Jong-chol, to New York, was to engage the United States and to begin to distance itself from Russia and China. And there is a continuity in North Korean strategy, geostrategic approach, which I think has now become very evident, which is that they would like to become not an ally of the United States, but a security partner of the United States in order to reduce its dependency on China and to ensure that it benefits from the American military presence in South Korea, so that South Korea never occupies and crushes North Korea, given the enormous imbalance now in the economy, military force, population, pretty much everything. And in that sense, I think there are games within games at the moment being played. One of them is that the role of UN Command itself is shifting. A few years ago, UN Command changed its slogan from essentially being kill every North Korean in sight to peace through reconciliation. The US military itself has shifted its posture, and one of the reasons we have seen Trump's policies unfold is because the US military realizes how dangerous the situation is in the Korean Peninsula. I don't think we should underestimate Kim Jong-un. I think he's actually in a hurry, and he wants very big changes in American policy in a very short period of time. He knows that Donald Trump may not be around very long, and that Donald Trump is willing to break things in order to change things, break alliances, break conventions, norms, whatever. And he knows that Trump now faces the opposite of anything but Obama. He faces anything but Trump in American politics. And almost the entire national security elite of the United States believes he should fail in dealing with Kim Jong-un and coming to a breakthrough. So we are at a moment where everything hangs in the balance, but many things could shift very quickly in the peninsula, in US military relationships with North Korea. And that no one can guarantee that North Korea will continue to exist, but we can increase the reduction of threat through many measures, not just nuclear measures. One of the important changes in American nuclear weapons posture that would come with a nuclear weapons-free zone, apart from the obvious ones of not having any stationed nuclear weapons in Korea or in transit, would be the United States would have to give up its prerogative to reintroduce nuclear weapons into Japan per the secret agreement, going back to 1951, I think, and to South Korea as asserted in 1991 when it withdrew nuclear weapons. There is a contingency option in that withdrawal, which was stated at the time by General Powell, and it would have to give up that contingency reintroduction if a nuclear weapon-free zone goes ahead. So there would be a very specific shift in American policy if a zone is implemented.
Yeah, I wanted to say that those of us who have worked in negotiations know that it's always a give and take. You make maximalist demands, but you must always have a blueprint of what you really want to achieve. And everyone has to come out of such a negotiation as a winner. You have to be able to say, I gained something. Because if you lose everything, and when the peace talks, I mean not peace talks, but when, for example, what happened in Iraq, or what happened in Libya, basically you lost everything, it wasn't a negotiation. So it has to be a win-win situation for both, that both leaders come out looking good of this. Now, as I think Peter Hayes just said, North Korea never put on the table that the US should denuclearize, and I don't think that that's their goal. I think we all know that is not their goal. That will never be achieved. And one of the issues that we have to also recognize is, because we always talk about DPRK withdrawing from the NPT, well, there is in the Non-Proliferation Treaty a clause that you have 3 months to announce your intention to withdraw. But if you look at the countries, the states parties to the NPT, North Korea is still listed there, because the view is, particularly by the P5, that this withdrawal is not effective because in 1995 the NPT was extended indefinitely, and so therefore those states parties that at the time were states parties cannot withdraw. That right does not exist anymore. So I think that that is something that we need to keep in mind. And I think to recognize DPRK as a nuclear power is therefore a total no-go. I mean, it's a demand that I think North Korea is too smart to really make, because they know it's just illusionary. It's just never going to happen. So when you think about what is going to happen, and I think Peter Hayes, who mentioned, like Trump may not be around forever, if you look at and you read the American papers, you will see that already the newly Democratic Congress, even though it's not a large majority, is making noises and making statements about trying to force certain changes, particularly in the disarmament and proliferation field. They've focused on, for example, the nuclear posture review, and they've said openly that they would like to have a reconsideration of it, and they would like to change it, and not accept it what it is. So there are changes going on in the American landscape, so to say, that I think North Korea is very smart to be aware of and to look at, to see how will that affect them in terms of their negotiation.
Yes.
Well, American nuclear weapon has been perceived by different actors as for different impact. Japan and South Korea may view U.S. nuclear weapon as a hybrid, and China and the U.S. and North Korea may view U.S. nuclear weapon not a friendly. Actually, China and U.S. used to be strategic friends in the Second World War, but soon they became enemy. They fought in Korea. Later they became quasi-ally to counter Soviets, and later they became more normal partner. And this they become collaborative rivals. So they change. At a different time, when nations have different interests, you see the other country to be enemy, foe, friend. The nuclear weapon could be a plus or negative. So who knows? North Korea would not be U.S. friend after 100 years. But it takes time. Over time, North Korea needs U.S. to be friendly, to give money, to recognize them, to have a paper, not to threaten them, or give a paper to aid them if China would threaten North Korea. If the U.S. would do this, North Korea would do more. If the U.S. would refuse to do anything, North Korea would still be nice to do a little, but not to do more. So this would, now we have a unique opportunity, because Trump's tenure is limited. He already lost Republican control over the House. And we need to encourage the U.S. to do more in order to get North Korea to give more concession. Personally, I think North Korea could abandon some nuclear weapon in 2 or 3 years. But don't expect that to be completely done in 10 years or 20 years. Probably in 30 years, they will keep some nuclear weapon. If they will not go up, but at least they can freeze or go down. So let's pursue a realistic objective, freezing, going down, and be friendly. And this, in my view, could be realistically pursued. So Trump has an opportunity, and his future U.S. government has opportunity, because North Korea can be hurt by sanctions, by China-U.S. collaboration. Even China and U.S. are cooperative rival. My president may still talk to President Trump in Argentina at the end of this month, how to contain North Korea's nuclear ambition, and how to represent incentive. And we need the Security Council to work together. So overall, I'm cautiously optimistic that we can do more. But I'm very realistic. We cannot do everything in 10 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
今日のお話を聞いて本当にいろんなことが分かりました。ありがとうございました。実は私10月の21日から27 27日まで共和国の方に行く機会がありましたので、せっかくですので今のお話をとですね、噛み合うかどうかそれは分かりませんが、ちょっとだけ報告兼ねてさせていただいてよろしいでしょうか。はい、今日のテーマも朝鮮半島の非核化ということで私もそう思うんですが、向こういろんなロボットの方とか政府の方とかそういう要人とお会いする機会がありました。研究者の方からもお話を聞くことができました。自分たちはやっぱりさっきお話がありましたが、アメリカの核の脅威というのを肌で感じたんだと。ですので、もう随分前から核の実験をし、そしていろいろあったけど、あるいは外国からいろいろ言われ続けてきたけど、核の脅威があったから自分たちがやったんだと、そのようなことを言われております。そして一定の水準に核の実験が達したんだと、だからもうこれ以上はやりませんというようなことを多くの方がやっぱりこう言われております。ですのでもうさっきずっと実験場を配置したとかいろいろあるんですけど、それが一応向こうのおっしゃっていることを私たち伝えております。ですのでなるほどなと、そういう形でもう実験は終わってもいいんだなということを私なりに納得しました。だからもうこれ以上核実験はやりませんよと要人の方がおっしゃってます。私たちはですね、こういう平和運動、反核運動をやっているので、いや核を廃棄してくださいって本当はその場で言わなくちゃいけなかったんですが、もうここまで達した、もうこれ以上やらないという形でですね、もうすぐ核をなくせと、そこまでちょっと自分自身は言えませんでした。しかしこれ以上核は続けないでください、実験は続けないでくださいということはですね、最低伝えることができました。ですので短期的にはすみません、アントン・プロコフさん、ロシアのですね、半島の非核化はですね、短期的には不可能であろうと、そういう立場ですので、私もそうかなと妙に納得しました。せっかく手に入れたものをすぐ廃棄するということは現実的にないかなと。しかしさっきいろんなプロセスを経てですね、周りの国も
すみません、他の発言者もおられるので、時間にお願いします。
はい、いろんな周りのサポートあればですね、それを長期的に非核化も可能かなと、それ希望も含めてですね、私も当然思っております。そして反問点のことですが、25日に軍備を反問点で、軍備をしないということを言われる、そういう約束があって実際にそうなっておりました。私も24日の日に聞きましたら、南側の兵隊は誰もいませんでした。で北側も少しいたんですけど、パッと見たらいなくなっていた。ですのでその軍事境界線も大きく変わっていっているんだなということを見てきました。以上報告と自分の思いを話しました。ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。次にはい、どうぞ。
I'm Nasruddin from University of Malaya in Malaysia. I have a couple of questions to Dr. Suzuki regarding the Northeast Asian nuclear weapons free zone. In 1970s, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, has signed a Treaty of Southeast Asia Nuclear Weapons Free Zone. And the situation in Southeast Asia is totally different than East Asia, especially the Northeast Asia. So none of the Southeast Asian countries develop nuclear weapons program. But in the case of Northeast Asia, China, is a member of nuclear club in 1964, and Japan used to develop nuclear weapons program during the war, and South Korea has developed twice, but and North Korea developed nuclear weapons program later. So in this situation, the Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia is really different. So if I may know, what is the stand of the Japanese government towards the Northeast Asian nuclear weapons free zone? And then number two, to what extent do you believe Northeast Asia nuclear weapons free zone can be materialized? Thank you very much.
Okay, just a moment. Dr. Volkov has to read to catch his flight. We would like to thank him to allocate his really busy time to attend this assembly. Thank you very much, Council. Dr. Suzuki.
はい、ご質問ありがとうございました。ご指摘のように東南アジアの地域と北アジア状況が違う、各国の状況も違いますね。核兵器地帯すべてそれぞれユニークなので、おっしゃるようにですね、それぞれの地域で独自の努力が必要だと思います。で我々は北東アジアでですね、すでに日本と韓国、過去のことはともかくですね、今NPT に入っておりですね、自分たちは核兵器は持っていない。それから我々の核兵器地帯はまず、中国、ロシア、アメリカの核兵器についてはとりあえず触れずにですね、北朝鮮とまず韓国の2カ国で核兵器地帯を作る、それから日本が入るということなのでですね、それに対して核兵器国が消極的安全保障を与えるという考え方ですので、それ自体はですね、十分に可能ではない。ただ今、日本の政府がどう思っているかという質問に対しては、日本政府の方も帰られたのか、いらっしゃらない。残念ながらいらっしゃらないですが、核兵器禁止条約のへの答えとほぼ同じです。この北東アジアの安全保障の環境が良くならない限り、北東アジア核兵器地帯についても前向きになれないという、基本的な考えを我々は聞いています。我々としてはですね、北東アジアの安全保障の環境を改善する意味でも、日本政府がこの